Hello and welcome back to the New Earth Business Podcast. I am here with Paula Carnell, who is the queen of the bees for me. We met at a women's business networking conference in Somerset, and she was a speaker. I was totally blown away by her story and what she's doing with the bees currently. So, Paula, massive, warm welcome to the New Earth Business Podcast.
Well, thank you so much. And I was so excited when I met you, and I've just really enjoyed learning more about you and your work. So perfect synergy, and great to be here answering your questions, having a chat.
Yay! Awesome. And I've just got to tell you this really exciting thing before we go into our conversation. On Monday, I went for a walk through the rapeseed fields near my house, and I came across a swarm. Uh, yeah. I was like, oh, the bees are with me. They're really with me. And I've also noticed a few going into the stonework of my house. And so they're kind of going in there. But yeah, I walked past this swarm and I thought, wow, I'm recording with you in 2 days' time. What are the chances? And then this morning I listened to your podcast about how to catch a swarm.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, I'm feeling very like in sync with the bee energy today.
Oh.
Um,
So
right.
did
So
you
go
get a
on.
feeling from the swarm? Did they give you any ideas of questions that you'd like to ask about the bees, or things you wanted to know?
Oh, mate, yeah, definitely, definitely. One thing that I felt from the energy of this swarm that I walked past in this beautiful yellow rapeseed field, they were kind of attached on a few of the rape crops that had landed on the floor, and they were all swarmed around that. And I felt this real gentleness coming from them, and not, I don't know, when I'd met a bee face to face as a child and there'd been like a swarm, we'd all go and run away as children, whereas I felt very like grounded, and I was with some friends and we just like walked past it. And then today I went back to check if it was still there and got a bit of footage on my phone, and it was almost like they were happy to see me. They
Oh,
yeah, and, they didn't mind me kind of getting quite close up and filming them, and, yeah, I've got a little bit more to tell you about this story, but I'm gonna leave this to my next question. I'm a Virgo, and I'm like, I've got everything in a specific order, and if I go off track, I'm probably gonna forget something. But yeah, I
okay.
felt welcomed by the bees. Is that normal?
It is. And I think all living beings love to be seen and heard. And they would have known that you saw them and you felt them. And that's why they welcomed you back. And I
Mhm.
could talk about how bees recognize people as well, but perhaps we'll save that.
Amazing. So I'm feeling quite emotional now as you're talking about this. Yeah, share about how bees recognize people.
Well, bees work on frequency and vibration. And so they are very much feeling beings. And we forget as humans that we are also emanating frequencies, and we acknowledge it in everyday life. So we can feel a bad vibe, a good vibe. We can feel people's energies. We go, oh, they're high energy, low energy. But when you start talking about it almost in a more scientific way, people are like, oh no, that's a bit woo, that's a bit weird. But actually bees, their whole being is about energy and frequency. So not only do they feel you and sense you, but they use their eyes. Honeybees have 5 eyes, and they actually look at you, they see you. And they did research on how bees recognize, first of all, plants, flowers, and then they went into buildings, locations, and people. And bees will actually look at a triangle of your face. They'll look at your 2 eyes and your mouth, and they can then position you so that they know whether they've seen you before because of those sort of measurements. And the facial recognition that you get on telephone and on telephones and things is actually evolved from research on bees, and that's how they have done it. So isn't that amazing? And so when you meet a beekeeper and they're always getting stung, you have to ask the question, what have they done to upset the bees? And bees don't just sting just for the fun of it. They die when they sting you. So I believe bees sting you to heal you. But also, if you walk up to a hive and you're angry, they're going to try and reset your frequency, your vibration. And if you think about it, it's like if you had a naughty child or somebody came into your space and they were really angry and you didn't want your space polluted with that energy, you'd want to poke them in the forehead and just go, get out, go away, step back. And that's what bees do. And so the thing is, with a sting, the first thing that will do is bring you back to the present moment. And when people are feeling emotion, they are more often than not in the present moment. They're either dwelling on the past or fear of the future. And if you look at frequencies, every frequency is related to an emotion. And the lower emotions like anger, hate, fear, grief, they will be sort of 80, 90 to 100 hertz. Whereas being present is 250 hertz. And the resonance of bees is 256 hertz. So their whole being is about being present. Isn't that mind-blowing?
That's so cool. That's incredible. And it makes a lot of sense, because I'd just been kind of having a really slow morning, decided not to go rush off to the gym, and thought, like, have my cup of tea in bed and then walk down, check if the swarm's there, and I was feeling really excited and happy. So yeah.
Oh, they would have loved that. The interesting thing is, well, on the scale of emotions and frequency, the one just before being present is courage. And when you approach a hive or a colony of bees, and before you're even present, even if you think of something like bungee jumping, where you're going to be very present when you're jumping off a bridge or whatever, you need that energy, that frequency of courage before you can become present. And that's so relative as well with beekeeping. You need that bit of courage, because there's always a risk you're going to get stung. And whether it's by accident or your fault or whatever, or whether you need healing, it's going to be uncomfortable. So there's always in your mind that fear of the future that you may well be stung. So then you have to rise to the courage to think, well, actually, I have a good purpose. I know what I'm doing in the hive. I know what I'm working with the bees. And then you become more present and focus on what you're doing. And then you almost become invisible with the bees, because you're at one with them. You're on the same frequency. And that's how to work with bees.
Wow. It's like your invisible Harry Potter cloak.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really cool to think about that in terms of meditation and being present with meditation, because for me, I do need that little bit of courage to actually get me to sit in meditation. There's this fear that as soon as we stop, our whole lives are going to crumble, and everyone, no one in the house will eat, and what's
Yeah.
going to happen. But actually, we move through that little bit of courage to presence, and whether it be meditation or whatever way that you're trying to get present. That's so interesting. So
And I
true.
find when you're present, time expands. And that includes when you're meditating and you sort of think, oh, okay, I could probably do a 10-minute meditation. And, it's like, oh, I haven't really got time, but okay, I'll squeeze in a 10-minute meditation. You might put an audio on or whatever that is that time. And then once you relax and you calm, you can come out of that 10 minutes feeling like you'd had half an hour. But on the same way, you could actually be in there, and at 9 minutes you're thinking, I want another half an hour. I just don't want to
Yeah.
come out of this blissful state. So being present is really, really important for all of us.
Yeah. Wow. So distilled like a lot of this information from the bees, and you've added it to your own life. And I know that in the talk that I went to with you, you were sharing a lot about your health journey, and then how the bees had kind of guided you through that. Could you share a little bit with our listeners about that?
Yes, yeah, of course. I think we all go through different stages in our lives, and I was somebody who was always very purposeful. I always felt I had a mission in life, and my mission always was to be an artist, and so I was an artist. So I had 20 years as a very successful artist, and I exhibited all around the world, and I absolutely loved it, and I was certain that that was what I was here to do and all I would ever do. And when I was 40, I had two sons who were 9 and 11. I was on my second marriage, so I'd had a period of time as a single mum. And I had a stepson who was 8. And I just had a really successful show in London. And there was lots of exciting things coming from that. So I wasn't done. There were projects that were taking me on to the next level as an artist. And I started to feel really ill. And as a mum, taking the kids to school, I could sort of get up, feed them, make sure everything was ready for school, do the school run. And then I would come home and I would literally have to be in bed all day. And I kept thinking, oh, perhaps I'm pregnant again, because I was so tired. And I'd have the tests. And of course, my periods had stopped as well. So everything was saying, oh, you're pregnant, you've married again. I was late 30s. And or 39. And so I thought, oh, I'd always wanted a little girl. I've got two boys and a boy stepson as well, so I'd always wanted a little pink one. And gosh, I just thought, I don't think you can say that anymore, can you? That I can have a little pink girl. Anyway, I thought I would have a girl, a daughter that I could pass on all my female wisdom to. And the test results kept coming back saying, no, you're not pregnant. And the doctors didn't know what was wrong. So I just pushed on through, and it really got worse and worse. And I was feeling very nauseous. So again, I was thinking, oh, I must be pregnant. And then one day, after about 3 months of this progressively getting worse, and not long after I just turned 40, I just couldn't move. I just absolutely could not move. And my whole body, it felt like I had my fingers in electrical sockets. I was just tingling all over. I felt if I opened my eyes or if I turned my head, I would be sick. I wasn't sick. And sometimes nausea is, you just think, for goodness sake, can't I just have one massive expulsion and then I would feel better? But I didn't. It was awful. And I was in excruciating pain. All my joints hurt. My whole body ached and was painful. And it was really, really frightening. And so I was in a dark room, and again, doctors couldn't figure out what it was. And it sort of goes on for a few days, then a few weeks, then a couple of months. And it ended up being 7 years. And it was 6 years before they diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And that's a genetic condition that you are born with, apparently, and incurable. So they told me I was a classic case. I'd always been hypermobile. I'd actually been under a rheumatologist from the age of 11 because I'd always had chronic pain in my wrists and my ankles and joints. I'd always been hypermobile, but in those days, the 70s and 80s, it was just a cool thing, to be able to put your legs around your neck. And I was always very good at yoga, I'm very competitive. So that didn't help. And because I'd run my own business for 20 odd years, I probably had not rested as much as I should have done. And I'd gone through a divorce. I'd been a single parent. I'd married again. I had teenage boys, had a stepson. And I think all of those things compounded, probably with a bit of perimenopause as well. And my body just went, stop. And so I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. They said, there's nothing we can do. We are surprised you've lived this long because you've got such a severe case of it. And the prognosis isn't good, a few years. You probably won't be around after 50. And we can offer you painkillers and antidepressants. And I didn't want to take either of those. So that whole journey of, it was 6 years before I was diagnosed. So that whole journey of the 6 years, I was really looking into how my body worked and what on earth was going wrong with it. So it wasn't just a case of laying flat and waiting for somebody to wave a magic wand. You know, I'd done a lot of research, and I had trained as a Reiki master, you know, like 10 years earlier. So I was very open to energetic medicine and to natural healing. And I've got a lot of friends who cover all kinds of natural, naturopathic, alternative, complementary treatment. So I had everything, you know, I tried everything, including colonics, you know, changed all my diet, you know, everything I changed. And I could never get beyond having 2 hours a day where I could be active. And active meant washing, being fed, you know, actually sitting up and eating a meal. I could, you know, I could with help sort of get around the house a bit, but, you know, I was able to go out in a wheelchair. But if I went out, you know, the consequences were awful. So people never see that. You know, you see someone out in a wheelchair. That was a big shock for me, actually, was I'd seen people in wheelchairs and I just thought they were feeling like me, but just couldn't stand up. And the big shock for me was how sick and ill and painful it was to sit in a wheelchair. You know, wheelchairs do not have good support anyway. And just the fact that I was not laying flat was so uncomfortable. And then being transported around, and trying to look at people, and you've always got your neck twisted up, you know, because everybody's taller than you, and everything is to one side, you know, you can't get close enough straight away in a wheelchair. So it was very, very uncomfortable. And so it was a real relief to get the diagnosis, because then it was confirmation that I was really ill. It wasn't just in my imagination. There was something physically wrong with me. And I think this comes back to the being heard and being seen, that with conventional Western medicine, they like to put you into a box. And if they can't put you in a box with a certain ailment, then they'd rather that you didn't keep bothering them, because you really are an inconvenience. And whether that is intention or not, that's certainly how I felt. And I know a lot of other people with chronic conditions feel. And if you're not able to leave your house, you do become very isolated, because, you know, in the 7 years I had 2 visits by doctors to my home, which is quite shocking. And I had some quite nasty episodes as well while I was ill, where carers really thought we should have an ambulance. You know, I'd collapse, or I'd have really severe chest pains. So it was a really dire time, but very good for learning meditation, because for at least the first 2 years, that was literally all I could do. And because I'd done so much yoga, I just used to lay in bed, and to try and distract myself, I would visualize a whole yoga lesson. You know, I
Wow.
knew it would be an hour. I would do the sun salutations. I would try and breathe as if I was doing it. And that was really, really valuable, you know, on so many levels, because it did calm me. It helped pass the time. It made me feel that I could still do things. But then I started extending it to remembering things I had done, places I had been, and then walks I had done. And then what I started to do was imagine or visualize walks I'd like to do, or walks that I'd done, but that I wasn't present, wasn't conscious of. And what's incredible is when you have that time to do it, it's amazing how everything we do in our lives goes into our heads, and we have it stored there. And when you can recall it, you recall it in so much detail. It's just astonishing how much information our bodies take in. And a walk that I practiced whilst I was bedbound was Ringstead Bay on the Dorset coast to Lulworth Cove. And it was a walk I'd done many times, you know, as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, but not really consciously. You know, I knew how many hours it would take, you know, like an hour and a half, and I could picture certain landmarks. But what was incredible was how the detail, that when I would lay down and think, right, I'm now going to walk, you know, I'm going to walk from, so I'd imagine getting out the car and walking to the first bit, and maybe looking at the beach, walking on the pebbles, you know, the different footpaths. And I'd remember the houses, I'd remember trees, I'd remember little bridges, footpaths, even certain flowers. It was astonishing. So after 6 years, I got the diagnosis, and I'd spent about 2 years researching Ehlers-Danlos before I got the diagnosis. So I was prepared for that, and I thought that might be what I had. And I'd already made the decision that once that was confirmed, I'd become a patient of a medical herbalist who happened to move into my town, so I could actually visit her.
Brilliant.
And that's what I did. And 8 months after her treatments, or from her treatments, I was able to walk with walking sticks. So I didn't need my carers, which was a huge relief. So I could feel like I was more of a mum, and a wife. The house was mine again, instead of having all these people coming in doing all the cooking and taking care of everybody. And then my mum introduced me to plant-based minerals, and so I took those, and that was like somebody flipped a switch. And within a couple of weeks, I just thought, my gosh, I'm actually feeling like I want to walk. I'm feeling like I want to do stuff. So after a few months, we decided to test run the Dorset Coast Pass. So we walked from Weymouth to Swanage, including my little bit that I'd done so many times in my head. And that's what we did. And I knew then I was well. But the bees, 2 years into being bedbound, I'm a Sagittarian. My birthday is in November. So I'd been a great one for having parties, for traveling, doing something exciting on my birthday, always celebrating it. And of course, I couldn't do that whilst I was ill. And to help me cope with the really awful situation I was in, I would always try and focus on the positive. So instead of thinking about what I couldn't do, which was my art, running my business, visiting friends, I would think about what I could do. And that's why I focused on meditation, because I could do that. And I'd focused on doing meditation, yoga, because I could do that, and meditation, walking. And I started to think about all the things I'd wanted to do when I had my career as an artist, but I was too busy to do them. And one of the things I'd always thought I'd do is keep bees. No idea why. I just thought it's something I would do. And being a Dorset girl, I was inspired by Bathsheba Everdeen, from Far From the Madding Crowd, Thomas Hardy's books. And there's a scene in the film of Far From the Madding Crowd with Julie Christie in, so the 1960s film. And she's got this beautiful linen dress on, and she's up a ladder, and she's got a bee skep, and she's catching a swarm. And she's got this beautiful, big, wide-brimmed hat with a silk veil on. And she just looks gorgeous. And everything about her, she's this independent, beautiful young woman who's being chased by all these men, but she's standing strong in her own. She's running her farm as a woman should do it, not how all the men should do it. So she's really nurturing for everybody, but she's still very young and learning stuff. And there she is catching a swarm of bees. And I think that image had just gone into my head. And I just thought, yeah, I want to keep bees. So Greg said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, a beehive. And he's like, don't be silly. You haven't got any bees. You can't have a beehive if you haven't got bees. And I said, well, you can't have bees until you have a beehive. So I need a beehive. Well, where are you going to get the bees from? I said, I don't care. I know they'll come. If I have a hive, they'll come. And so reluctantly, he built me a beehive, and they came, the bees came, and I had a local mentor who put bees in. So the bees were part of my journey. So from 2 years in, I had the bees, and every week I'd be wheeled out, propped up, next to the hive. And I had a mentor who taught me about beekeeping.
Wow. That's such an incredible story. I love that there's like lots more that I learned in there compared to when I listened at the conference. Yeah, it's been a real journey for you, and it sounds like they kind of came really at the right time and have just been a real healing guide for you. I know that in like Celtic mythology and shamanic mythology, there's so much juice there about the bees and with the healing. Is there any particular like lineage that you follow in terms of bee medicine, or is it something that you've kind of curated and created yourself?
I think the longer I've been working with bees, then I've come to learn about all the history and the different traditions. But for me, I had a very conventional beekeeper who just put bees in the hive and taught me beekeeping. But the real awakening for me was after we'd taken our first honey harvest. And the next time Chris came to see the bees, he had this big brown packet, and I said, oh, you know, what's in the packet? And he said, oh, it's for the bees. And I said, what have we got for the bees? I was so excited. And you know, we'd had this harvest and the bees were all happy and healthy. And when he unwrapped it, it was sugar, a sugar fondant. And I was so horrified, because every part of my body was like, no, we cannot feed bees sugar. And I was so shocked and so stunned by it. And then so ashamed, because it's obvious, if you take all the honey, what are the bees going to eat? And I knew in every part of my body it was wrong. And there's this really wise, experienced, lovely beekeeper telling me, no, this is what we do. And, you know, when I started to question other beekeepers, and I'd say, you know, we just can't feed them sugar. I know we can't feed them sugar, but we have evolved in humanity to always be able to prove why we think something or we believe something. There's always got to be the science or the evidence that proves it. And what I found so frustrating and so difficult was, why could nobody else see how wrong this was? And because I'd been ill and I'd been observing my health and experimenting with all kinds of things, I'd stopped eating sugar, and that really helped stop the nausea. So I knew there was a connection with sugar and nausea. I also knew that sugar was a real toxin. It was highly addictive, and there was no good for it in a sick body. And why on earth would we give a processed white sugar to wild creatures like bees who have collected nutritious honey? And it just blew my mind. And that was when I realized that I was on my own in the beekeeping world, and that I had to prove what I intuitively know. I really had to find the evidence, because I could not stand by and watch this practice continue. And so I suppose that's when I had to really trust my intuition, and my intuition led me to doing certain research. But really it was geared up about understanding human health and then translating that into bee health, because that was all I had. And I suppose working with the bees, listening to them, trying to listen to them, and sitting with them, and not really expecting them to communicate with me, and probably not asking enough questions, but basically tuning into my intuition and going, this is, I know it's wrong, this is what we have to do. So it started off with the sugar. Actually, before that, it was worrying about smoke. I didn't like using smoke in a hive, but that wasn't so controversial, and my bees were so calm and gentle that that wasn't an issue. We just didn't use smoke. And so then it was the sugar, and then it was the chemical treatments inside hives. And by then, Chris, my mentor, when it came to Varroa treatment season and he came with his stuff, he said, I know that you're not going to want chemicals, so I've brought a natural treatment, thymol, to treat your bees for Varroa. And I was like, oh, what's in it? Oh, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. I really don't want to do it. And he's saying, well, we have to, otherwise they're all going to die of Varroa. So we had this one treatment of thymol. And, you know, I think it's like a lot of things in life, you know, when you're a mum and you get pregnant and suddenly you have to make these decisions that you're not prepared for, and you haven't had enough time to really research it. And it's like that with beekeeping. Suddenly something happens and it's like, oh, I haven't got time. And you have to trust somebody. And I think we've been educated to not trust ourselves. You know, we always have to trust something or somebody outside of ourselves. And so I had to really go on this deep research learning curve of whatever I could find out about bees. And as I got well, I began studying to be a medical herbalist. So my emphasis then was about herbs and about my own health and that kind of connection. And then I started to realize all the relationships with bees. And then when I was well, I then had opportunities to go and travel around the world and meet with different beekeepers where they don't feed sugar, where they don't use chemicals. And I could meet scientists and say, so why not? And why are we doing it? And why are you not? And once I found that there was evidence that bees treated even with natural thymol, which is using essential oil of thyme, plus some other goodies, that can create infertility in the male bees in the second generation of a treated hive. And that for me was like, boom, you know, now I know. And I know I've changed even commercial beekeepers, so honey producers, once they've had that bit of evidence, that's been enough for them to go, yeah, okay, we're going treatment free. So it, you know, I don't want to seem arrogant, but I think just through default and my situation, I had to find my own way. And I wasn't in a position to go to groups because I couldn't travel around. So it really was the internet, universities, you know, any kind of research papers, and books, lots and lots of books.
Yeah, it's so lovely and refreshing to hear that story, because like you said, we have kind of had a lot of our agency taken away from us, and we're kind of told that you know you need to be doing a specific course or studying under this governing body, but actually so much of it we can garner from ourselves, from our intuition, and from the internet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so much wisdom available to us now.
Yeah.
But now what I do a lot more is really go on my intuition and with my experience with the bees that I work with. And what is so exciting is I've now been mixing with scientists in Slovenia and Turkey who are interested in my intuitive thoughts that will then inspire them, or is inspiring them, to then try and prove what I'm thinking, because I'm feeling stuff that hasn't been either tested or tried or fully understood. And that's really, really exciting, you
That's
know, that
so exciting. That makes me want to do a big squeal.
I know,
If
I know.
people like you and me, this is what we should be getting paid for, for our
Yes, yeah,
highly intuitive gifts.
yeah, yeah. So that's just wonderful. So I feel in a really blessed, grateful place. And it gives me confidence then to train my bee team and my students, you know, with my online courses,
Mhm.
um, to really be sure that I'm always practicing what I preach, and that I give people the confidence to really hold on, really hold with what the values are, to not go down that fearful route of, oh, I need to interfere, I need to do this. It really is sitting back and observing the bees, and yet having the wisdom and knowledge so that you're not being irresponsible. You know, it is getting that balance. It's not a case of just putting bees in a hive and ignoring them and dancing around them once in a while. It is that really knowing what's going on scientifically, you know, that you know the life cycle of the bees, you know what should be happening, but then you're also spending time using all of your senses to know what is going on and what help your bees may need.
Yeah. This leads me perfectly on to the next question, which is, how can we apply what we've learned or what you've learned from bees into business? As this is the New Earth Business Podcast, a lot of people that listen are entrepreneurs and or are starting to create conscious companies. Now, I've been doing a little bit of research about this, but I'd love to get your take on a few sort of principles that we can take from the bees and then apply them into our businesses.
Okay, brilliant. I love this. One of the things I missed whilst I was ill was not so much the painting, but it was running the business. I just am so passionate about business, but also about running passion-led businesses, and
Yay!
building a team and having it as a loving, creative team. And when I started beekeeping, obviously I was interested in any kind of connection between business and bees and the organization of the hive. And it's always been portrayed that it's a feminine monarchy, that you have a queen and she rules all these female worker bees, and then you have a few male bees that just do as they're told, eat, fed, get pampered, and go off and mate with a queen and fall to their deaths. But in actual fact, there's this amazing quote, which I'm afraid to say I cannot remember who said it, but every decision a bee makes is for the good of the species. Every decision a human makes is for the good of the self. And when you are running a business or you're inside a hive, you have to think about the consequences for the whole being. And with honeybees, we see a single bee and we think it's a whole being, but it isn't. It's part of a super organism, which is 50,000 bees. And I heard this amazing talk last year by this old boy called Willie Robson, whose his family beekeeping business has been like 75 years. And I think he's been keeping bees 68 years, with his dad who set it up. And I thought he'd be a conventional beekeeper, but he isn't. He has great, tough native bees. He doesn't feed them sugar, doesn't use chemicals. And he is a honey producer, Cambridge Honey in Northumberland. So not the easiest place to keep bees. And he said bees have a corporate memory. And I'm like, oh, is this one of those embarrassing moments where somebody's used the wrong word, and, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, he'd used the perfect word, because he said with his bees live 6 weeks. The queen lives 2 to 7 years, but the individual bees live 6 weeks. So if one of these individual bees leaves the hive and it finds this amazing source of nectar or pollen, it's going to go back to the hive. Now, if it kept that wisdom to itself, the hive would not benefit, because there would not be enough bees. That one bee could not collect enough nectar for the benefit of the whole. But also, the bees are only flying for the last 3 weeks of their lives, if that. So once that bee dies, that knowledge will have been lost. So what the bee does is it comes back and it dances. So there's this other quote: when a bee sees food, it dances more. Humans, when they see food, they eat more, but the bee will dance more, and the dance is telling the whole hive where that source of nectar is. But also the dance will say, the plant source is about this big, we're going to need this many bees, it's going to take this long, the sun is at this position, the nectar will last for this many minutes or hours, and we need this many bees to stay behind to receive the honey when it comes in. And that dance is carried through in the resonance of the wax. So the whole hive get to know that knowledge, and the memory of that, the corporate memory, is held within the corporation of the big organism. So if you think, if you're running a business and you have a team, if one of your team discovers some little hack with social media or how to do the website, you don't want them to keep it to themselves. You want them to put it in an SOP that the whole company has, so that when they go off on maternity or on holiday or leave the company, your company has got that knowledge. And I do liken it all a bit to the Borg. If anybody ever watched Star Trek, I always found the Borg really frightening. They're this cube of sort of cyborgs, and what they would do, their planet was this sort of big technical cube, and the cyborgs would go to a planet and they would see a new species, and what they would do is literally put their hands on the neck, and they would just absorb all the knowledge of that species, and that species would then be absorbed with the Borg. So the Borg had the knowledge of everything they had overcome, which made them a super organism that was very difficult to defeat. So you couldn't stand up against the Borg. So on the one hand, as an individualist, it's absolutely horrific, and you think, my gosh, I don't want to do that. But for the success of the species, so as the bees, they need to hold all that information. And then where the human perspective is that the men don't do anything, they just eat, sleep, and have a party with the queens. In actual fact, the male bees have these huge eyes, and they have freedom to roam in all the different hives. So if you want to go into sort of really deep spiritual stuff, those drones are absorbing the information from how all these other colonies of honeybees are organizing themselves, where they're getting their forage. And then when the male bee mates with the queen, it's on a really special energetic spot. So they have these drone congregation areas, which are often sort of cross points of energetic or geopathic stress lines. And that knowledge is input into the queen, and the queen will mate with between 15 and 48 drones before she returns to the hive, having stored all the sperm from all those drones. So the DNA, the imprint, the memories of all these drones has gone into the queen, so that that colony, the next colony, they've got the collective wisdom of their species, of that area. And this is why we should not be importing bees. We have to allow our bees to evolve in their native area. So when we have a business, we need to think as being a corporate whole. And if you are running a business, you're not the queen who just sort of flits around and gets pampered and doesn't do any of the work. You are that energetic source that holds together the faith of the survival of your species or your business. And so it's really important that the queen, or the ruler of any company, is regularly touched by all the bees. So or by all the teams. So the queen inside a hive, if all the bees don't smell her pheromone or don't have contact with her, they go into disarray and panic, and they just think, oh, we're dying. And they do die out. And I think it's, I go in and I train in corporate with sort of team management and how to motivate teams to work together. And I have noticed this when companies grow, particularly if they grow very quickly, the leader can become too detached from all the workers, and then chaos arises because they don't know what the values are. They haven't got that connection to source that gives them the faith to take the risks, to experiment, to share the corporate knowledge that they're learning. And I think this is the new way of running business. This is the new earth paradigm. This is the way that we have to work as a collective, that every piece is as important. And as a queen of a colony or as a leader of a business, you have that responsibility to hold the wisdom through several generations. And that's, that's just the tip of the iceberg, but that's how I see it. Yeah.
That's incredible. I didn't realize they held this ancestral wisdom, and that was how it was, yeah, spread out through the hives. And it makes so much sense not to bring them in from other places. Now I'm literally never buying honey unless it's local honey from that particular place that I'm in. Wow. Also,
Well,
I've got
then local honey is not, yes, so local honey is not, honey is only as good as the environment it comes from.
Mhm.
And you need to know how the beekeeper is keeping the bees and what the bees are foraging from. And now our government have allowed neonicotinoids again in crops, on sugar beet. We cannot be poisoning the pollinators without poisoning ourselves. And so if you have a honey from ethical, sustainable environments around the world, you are supporting good, healthy beekeeping and also healthy agriculture. So I know we should support things locally, but we have a planetary problem. We have an Earth size problem. And I think we need to look at things from a global situation. And if there are areas of the world where they're taking care of the bees, where they have a pristine forest, where they have lots of wildflowers, we should be buying that honey because we're supporting that environment. And also, particularly from, the tropic region, the bees don't have a winter. So you can take honey because the bees aren't trying to store honey to get them through the winter. And here in Britain, our bees really struggle without having enough forage, and they need to collect enough honey through the summer to get them through the winter to feed themselves. And so we really are limited to how much honey we can take from our bees. And the more we try and buy local honey, the more pressure we're putting on the beekeepers to take the honey from our bees without planting enough food to feed them, and without the climate to give the bees forage all year round.
Thank you so much for that information. That's super, super powerful. I've just been recently in Thailand running a retreat there, and I was walking from one thing to another, and one of the staff members at the sanctuary where I was working came up to me with a little box and opened it, and there was a honeycomb in there and a few bees still in the honeycomb, and it was it was a shock because obviously as we've been gearing up for this podcast recording, the bees are really being present with me, and she said, "Here, grab some," and there was a few little bees still in there, and I grabbed a bit, and it tasted so different from any honey that I've ever tasted before. This is created on Koh Phangan Yang, so like that was their local honey, and then I went and did a really powerful meditation sort of workshop afterwards, and I think it was it was all about sharing your voice and the blockages that we have in terms of like things that we learned at school that said that, we weren't good singers and this and that, and ideas that our parents put on us. And the workshop that I was running was all about claiming your voice. And I really felt the energy of the bees with me after I'd like gobbled down all this lovely honey. And I also, I don't know, I feel like they're very supportive to sharing of a voice, sharing of song. Because again, it's frequency, isn't it? It's like bees hum.
Yeah.
That's their song.
And the Greeks used to believe that if actors and orators and writers would eat the honey, it would sweeten their tongue, so that, it would sweeten their voice, it would sweeten their words. So isn't that
Wow,
lovely that,
that's so
what a connection?
cool. Yeah. Yeah, so going back to what I was saying earlier about finding this swarm, so I found it and then thought, oh, well, that's a beautiful thing, and didn't think much else of it. And then spoke to a friend of mine who lives up the road from me on a farm and said, oh, I found a swarm. And she said, oh, our friend Dan, both of his swarms died at the beginning of the year. Are they called swarms or called, what do you call them when they're
Or a
in the
colony, yeah, a
colony? Yeah.
colony, yeah.
So two colonies died at the beginning of the year, and so he's looking to populate his hives again. Now, this person has become a good friend of mine. It's since I've moved here to Somerset, and he sells cacao, and I've started to use his cacao in my cacao ceremonies, and we've got this lovely relationship building. And it was like this kind of series of connections, like found the swarm, told the friend, then the friend said, oh, another friend needs one, so I sent him a picture today, and he's coming around later, and we're going to go and collect it this afternoon.
Wow. And you listen to the podcast, and now you know what you have to
This
do.
is the podcast, and now I know what to do. But for me, the medicine of the bees that's coming to me in this moment is the connection, and how we can, yeah, use the idea and the energy of the bees to then connect with other humans. And
Yeah.
that's basically what you were saying before. It's like this wisdom is being passed down. I'm showing my friend Dan the way to get to the thing, so he can then
Oh,
use it, and then I'll be sitting in a cacao ceremony with him, and surely I'll use some of the honey that those bees have made to sweeten the cacao, and this
yeah.
beautiful circle just continues. I'm so excited about it all.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Buddhists in Bhutan, they believe the highest level of reincarnation is as a bee. And in the Quran, there's a whole chapter called the bee, where Allah gave his wisdom to the bees to pass on to humanity. So I like to see the bees as this sort of higher realm that circulates the earth. And when we want to connect with each other or with the higher realms, we use the bees. And the bees really do connect everything. And when I first started keeping bees, and when I first got well and I had my herbal medicine studies, I still am a distributor for the minerals that really helped me, and I was a beekeeper, and I felt I had three separate businesses, or sort of aspects to myself. But then I got an opportunity to work with the bees, and what was incredible is so I went all in on bees. I just went all in. I had to become an expert before the Newt opened. I had 2 years of working with the bees there before they opened to the public, and I knew I had to have some credibility, because of being treatment free and not feeding them sugar and all of this. And what was amazing was the more I studied about bees, the more it pulled together the minerals and the herbs. So the bees are the original medical herbalists. And I love that. And the healing, the products from the hive are all medicine. In the Quran, it is that, the different colored honeys that come from the bellies of the bees are signs of the different healing properties. So, again, that connects to the plants. They're different colored honeys because they've come from different plants. So I love it. I know, every day is a school day, and there's always so much more to learn about bees, and they just keep wowing me with the way they connect everything and everybody when you're ready. And I think there is this humanity has this pull or this desire to understand bees. When you just look everywhere, that bees are on tea towels and mugs and t-shirts and jewelry, and people who've got no other connection with bees are buying things with bees on because they feel a pull to the bees. They don't know what they don't know, and they're just wanting to connect with bees. So I feel the bees, because they're sharing our environment, they're like that last layer of wake up to save our planet. They're like, okay, you're killing us. You've been killing us for ages. We can show you how to save the planet, save yourselves, and save us, and we can all move on to this higher realm. And I find that fascinating. And if I can delve into a belief I have.
Please do.
Okay. The last few years, obviously, as I've become better known as a beekeeper, I have more and more people telling me when they see bees, and telling me when they don't, and telling me when they see dead bees. And over the last few years, I am seeing more and more bees. I'm just seeing bees everywhere. And naturally, I'm concerned about environmental issues and, chemtrails and EMF radiation and all the things that could be killing bees. However, in my life, I'm seeing more bees in my garden. I'm seeing more bees everywhere. But I'm also having that polar opposite where people are going, we haven't seen any bees. It's quiet. We're not got any birds. And I was really contemplating this because I'm thinking, what is going on? Really, what is going on? And I feel as the resonance or the frequency of humanity is changing, we really are having a separation of two earths. And I feel one is that lower frequency, third dimensional earth, and we have the fifth dimension. And there are many of us who are straddling the two. We're dipping into that third dimension, but we're wanting to be in the fifth. We believe that it's coming, but we're not quite sure whether we're there yet or not. And maybe with certain groups of people, we're fully in there. And then with other groups of people, we're back to the third dimension. And I think the bees have left the third dimension. And I think that's why people are seeing all the death. And I have odd snippets of wisdom from people who may not appear. They have one message from the bees that they will share with me. And some of them have been considered mad or crazy or wrong or whatever. And I've been pulling together all these little bits. And something that one person said to me was, you don't need to worry about bees with 5G. And I'd been worrying about bees with 5G for years. And it really played on me. And I'm like, how can we not be worried about bees 5G? But they wouldn't elaborate. They just said, there's other stuff to worry about. Don't worry about that. And then I had this realization that 5G, the negative parts of 5G, are a third dimensional world. And the bees don't need to be there. And that's why we don't need to worry about the bees, because they can leave. They're flitting between the worlds, and they're taking with them who wants to join them. And I just love that, because like a swarm, we're following the bees. And as we step closer to the bees, we have more birds, we have more flowers, we have more deeper connections with our land, with our environment, with fellow beings. And we're creating a new earth, which is heavenly and full of the resonance of bees. So I just love it. So I'm not worried. I'm really optimistic. I'm really excited. And yeah, that's how I see where we are now.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, because the concept that you're talking about has just been getting more and more strong for me over these last few months, really. And that difference between, especially with friendship groups, and kind of going from one group, sort of slightly more 3D conversations, to then another group where You just feel really seen and really heard.
Mm,
And I can't get it out of my head at the moment that I'm literally living in two separate
mm,
realities. And I'm really interested in how it's going to flow over the next few years, whether, because I know they're not actual physical, they're simultaneously like quantumly layered on top of each other. They're both, there's not like one world and another world. And
no.
it's our perception, it's our frequency that we're on. So it's really interesting that the bees are, you're finding these bees are just like they're resonating on that frequency now, and they're not bothering
Mm,
with that, and they're leaving all of that bit to just
mm.
do what it needs to do. And I suppose I feel like our role there is to be that messenger and be that bridge at the moment, like going back and getting a
Oh,
soul that may be
absolutely.
over there and saying, come over here.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, I'm involved with a project in the north of England called the Bee Arc, and it's spelled ARC, as a bridge. And
Um,
that is a building which is combining social, economic, and sort of research all about bees, but inspired living for humans. So it's a concept of a selection of buildings where people can live, work, study, learn, play, enjoy bees, but it's inspired by the spirituality of bees. And what is so interesting is that involved with the founder, and together we are having such deep conversations to try and create this new project. And we've got the architects and the planners and the surveyors and all this going on, who are saying, well, what about the water, what about electricity? But what we are realizing is our conversations have to be on a fifth dimensional level. And it's so exciting, but it's also so difficult, because we all so easily get trapped back to the economics of third dimension, just with valuing our time, valuing the project, timelines, everything. And we're having to work together to enable this bee arc to create itself. And it has to be built by a community. It is not James and I just being like king and queen and building this arc. It is constructing a bridge that is evolving from dreams, from dream
I was gonna
time.
say I'm just connecting. I'm like, oh my God, this is all coming in a dream.
Yeah, it is. And I'm getting these little snippets. So I learned just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it's just like so fast at the moment. There's all these little things coming together. But the indigenous tribes around the world communicate with each other through dream time. So the Aborigines know exactly what the Native Americans are doing. The Kogi know what, they're doing up in the Arctic. And it's just, they have other ways of communicating, which could well be through the bees. It is that extra layer. And so we've got to let go of our restrictive limitations of how we construct a new earth. And that's really, it is tough work. It really is. When you hear about people doing the work, it is doing the work, because you have to heal yourself. You have to be aware, and then do the work, and then move on. And it is like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but
Mhm.
it's so exciting.
Yeah, it's a constant process of dissolving, I think.
Mm,
Like
mm.
dissolving that layer and the next layer, and then you get something happen to you in life, and then yeah, you go back a few steps and keep going. But I'm so proud of you. Thank
Oh,
you for going on this journey for everyone, and sharing your work with the world, and your insights. And I could absolutely talk to you forever. I don't think I've even scratched the surface on my questions. Because we've just had a great conversation, but perhaps there's a part two in the mix.
oh, yeah.
Couple of last little moments. What can we do? What can people, the listeners, do sort of locally to support the bees and to help them learn from the bees in their business?
Okay. So the bees need more flowers, and they need less chemicals. So the two things you can do: plant more flowers, make sure they're not treated with any nasties, and buy, eat, grow chemical-free food. If we do that, the more of us who do that will tip the scale. It'll become more affordable for everyone. And that is the best thing to do. So it's not about getting a beehive. It's about protecting our environment so the bees can be strong. The bees don't need us. We need the bees more than they need us.
Yeah,
And then with
definitely.
business, I think it is that learning from that colony and that really cooperative, nurturing, caring environment that the bees have spent 150 million years to get right. Why do we have to try and start from scratch? Let's learn from the bees and what makes them such a successful species. And that's what we need to bring into our businesses.
Absolutely. I'm on that journey at the moment. I feel like I've been too long the solo entrepreneur, and
Oh,
I feel my work's really, really changing and evolving into something else at the moment. I don't know what yet, but I know it's team led, and I'm ready for
mm.
that.
Yeah. And I think that's a big step for particularly entrepreneurs who are very solo. And you often, particularly if you're in your kind of work and my kind of work, where you do feel isolated because you're not that conventional business and you're dealing with healing in whatever form. And the way we have to evolve is realizing it's not we can't do it on our own. We don't need to do it on our own. We need to collaborate. We need to share the wisdom each of us have so that together we can accelerate humanity's growth.
Yeah, and not be scared of sharing, and not feel
Absolutely.
like that's my idea. I have ownership on that idea, as you just mentioned so beautifully. Like the
Mm,
Aborigine tribes people will know what the indigenous Native American Indian people are dreaming about, and sharing those dreams and sharing those wisdom, and we can learn so much from that. So my
absolutely.
final question: what does New Earth business mean to you?
It means love. It means security and cooperation.
Love,
It's that real
security.
heart-centered, growing together as a team. Yeah, that's what it means to me. And feminine energy, but with masculine warriors supporting that energy.
Yeah, we definitely need to do it all together. Everyone's got their places for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Paula, thank you. This conversation has been so inspiring. I absolutely can't wait to get it out to everyone.
Oh, thank
I'd
you.
love to know how we can connect with you. And oh yeah, I've got here. Are there any books or podcasts that we can listen to learn more about this? Obviously
Oh, yeah.
yours. So give
Well,
give
I
me
have
give
my
me the
own.
works.
Okay, so I have my own podcast, which is Creating a Buzz About Health. I've got two books out, A to Bees, Artist to Bees, and A Quest for Bees in Bhutan. I'm writing two more books. One is Creating a Buzz About Health, which is more detail about my health journey and how I maintain my health. And This is Honey, which I hope to have both of those out by the end of this year. I've got a website, paulacarnell.com. You can see me or my wonderful team of beekeepers at the Newt in Somerset. So we run bee safaris Monday to Friday at 2:30. So you have to be a member and you've got to book, through the website. And for guests of the hotel, we do honey tastings twice a week. So one of my bee team, Kerry, she's also trained like myself to be a honey sensory analyst in Bologna. So she runs those with me. And at the Newt, I'm so excited. Um, at the end of July, we will be holding a bee immersion stay. So people who want to stay at the New and want to have a deeper involvement and connection with the bees, and I am personally hosting them from the Thursday afternoon to the Saturday. I'm just so excited. We've spent several months sort of planning this and putting it all together. And the Newt, it's got its two hotels, but with the farmyard, it's a little bit out of the way. So they've put aside just 5 rooms so that we can have this really intimate group. and I'm really excited about that. So if anybody wants to know about that, either contact Antonella at the Newt or myself, and yeah, and then we can give more details. But I just love helping people have that deeper connection with bees. So that's more of what I want to be doing, is that kind of healing work and helping people connect with bees and nature.
That experience at the Newt sounds amazing, that full
Oh,
immersion. Oh, wow.
I know. And such a wonderful place to be fully immersed with the bees.
Yeah,
You know, we've got the space, we've got the woodlands, we've got the bees. So really exciting.
amazing. Well, I look forward to coming to one of your events or another talk in the future. Um, I think that's it from me. So thank you so much for showing up and for giving your time. And I know that you're super busy at the moment, and spring is when lots of like bee maintenance needs to happen. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, it's been an absolute pleasure and such an honor. And I just feel there's so much that the bees want to share with everyone. So it's really important that I've been given these opportunities. So thank you so much.
Thank you.